podcast. Today we're going to be talking about something pretty important, and it's wholesaling. And we're going to talk about why wholesaling is such a great strategy for brand new investors because they're quicker. They're much simpler than fix and flips. You only have to do half of the equation, not the whole thing. You don't have to worry about funding. You can get paid in just a few weeks and use that money for other investments or to pay down debts. So let's talk about how successful at wholesaling is so critical for new investors and why I recommend it. Why real estate wholesaling is the best thing for new investors. What we're going to cover today is why wholesaling is so great for new investors. We're talking about some pro tips to make wholesaling easier. We're going to go through the 7 simple steps for wholesaling. So what is wholesaling? Well, wholesaling is getting a good deal under contract and then selling that contract for a profit. Okay, you go find a good deal and you sell it, good deal, to somebody else. So let's say you go find a property for $100,000. And let's say that there's a fix and flip investor that would buy that from you for $110,000. Well, what they can do is give you $10,000 and then they can take over your position in the contract and they buy it from the seller for $100,000. That's what wholesaling is. So why is wholesaling the best thing for new investors? Well, there's a few reasons for that. It is only half the process. You have to find the property, then you have to fix the property up and project manage and sell the property and take on risks if there's repairs, repair problems, timeframes, changes in values. You're only having to do the buyer side. That's why it's so attractive. And you don't have to do the fix-ups. You don't have to manage contractors. It's a faster paycheck. Once you find a good deal, you can be paid as fast as a few days or a few weeks, depending. There's also less management. You have to manage construction crews. There's less risk. In many cases, you don't have to sign on a loan. Cost overruns are a very big problem in construction where there's additional costs. It costs more than you think. That can be mitigated by having proper forms, by having proper agreements, by working with a project manager. Also, price changes all the time. So price can go up, price can go down. There's risk of price fluctuation that could be occurring. Also, with wholesaling, you don't need a lot of money to get started. And that makes it a lot easier when you don't have to come up with a lot of cash to make it happen. Now, what are the downsides to wholesaling? If you're wholesaling, you typically will not make as much money as you would because the end buyer that's going to fix and flip or rent the property has to make a profit. So if you're going to wholesale the property, that person needs to be able to fix the property up and sell it, or they need to be able to buy it and cash flow on that property. If they're not able to do those things, you're gonna have a hard time finding a buyer for that property. So you've got to find very good deals, a deal that you can make some money on and a fix and flipper or someone that's gonna rent that can cash flow on. That's the ticket here. So how much money can you really make when you're wholesaling a property? Well, anywhere from $1,000 to $100,000. Typically, it's $5,000 to $20,000 is what I see in most cases. On a really, really good deal, a wholesaler can make more money than a fix and flipper, but that's typically not the case. I'll give you an extreme example. I saw a wholesaler made $92,000. I haven't made that much. The buyer's gonna make around $35,000. So, there's money in there for wholesaling, but this is really not typical. It really comes down to how good you are at finding deals that have good profit margin. That's the ticket to all of this. So let's talk about the 7 steps for the whole process from the beginning to the end. First, I gotta grab another drink, guys. Okay, number 1, create a blueprint. First thing you gotta do is determine what zip codes you want to be investing in. And the way you do this is you find out where the most cash buyers are buying. Cash buyers is no loan, it is pure cash. This tells us there's investments happening in that area. It also assumes that there's lots of investment activity. So once you find this, how many cash purchases are happening in the last year, in the last 6 months, you find that, you do that by zip code, and then you sort it from most to least. Those that have the most are the ones that you should be targeting, and you can go and find properties there. Now, you'll take a property anywhere, but if you find a property in that area, you're gonna target that area is basically what we're saying. So reverse engineering your success. We call this the next property roadmap. This is how you reverse engineer your success. And we use driving for dollars. This is one of the strategies in actually finding properties. You determine how many hours you're gonna drive per week, how many days per week, how you will contact the prospects. This is a copy of our next property roadmap, and it basically lays out a week week-by-week schedule and tells you how long on average it should take you to find a deal. Now, it could take longer, it could be shorter. It's going to depend on your skills, it's going to depend on your area, it's going to depend on competition, it's going to depend on market conditions. So this is not to say, yes, this is exactly how it's going to work. What I find this is your North Star. This points you in a direction and gives you something to do to get to where you want to be. Then once you've had the success, then you know your numbers and how much it took to make a deal happen in your area and with your skill sets that you currently have. That's really big. So just it's to give you an idea of these numbers, right? These vary, but we use that next property roadmap to help us head in the right direction. So if you're gonna go drive for 6 hours a week, you would get about 20 properties per hour. That would add about 2,100 properties, and then you would skip trace. You get 3 to 4, that'd be like 6,100 phone numbers. If it take you about 20 weeks to find a property, if you're spending 6 hours a week driving and 6 hours a week calling, it may happen a lot faster and it could take longer, but this gives you a blueprint or an idea, and that next deal blueprint breaks all that down for you. Step number 2 is get your software set up. Their driving routes, I recommend using Investor's Edge. Skip tracing, I recommend Investor's Edge. Phone dialing, I recommend Mojo Sells. Driving routes, you want to make sure that you don't drive the same streets twice in more than a 6-month period. It can help you know properties that have equity. It can help you pull comps. Skip tracing, this gives you the phone number of the property owner, and then you plug that into a phone dialer. This helps a lot with call reluctance. It helps you keep track of things, and then you've got to go out there and simply drive. This is how we actually find these properties. We identify the area with the most cash buyers, looking at Investor Edge activity. We look for properties that have need of repairs. Bank loans. Banks can only loan on properties in good condition. Talked a little bit about this. If the home is in bad condition, the owner has 2 options. They can spend the time and money to fix the property up, or they can sell to somebody that's paying cash or getting a hard money loan. That's their 2 options. Most people do not want to spend the money. So if you see a property that has bad roofs or broken up windows or construction materials or overgrown lawn or gutter disrepair, legal notices on the door, missing siding, snow tracks, tires, vacant, those types of things, those are the properties you want to build a list for. You're building a list of prospects which we will follow up time and time again. You keep calling, you keep working with them until they actually want to sell or say, take me off your list, I'm not interested. Next step is we actually start making the phone calls, okay? You skip trace, you get the phone numbers. I like to set up in Mojo, as I talked about earlier, or you can just call and keep track of that manually, do spreadsheets and those things. By the way, Mojo is not a sponsor. They are not, I'm not getting paid or anything from those guys. It's just something I've used and I think is a fairly good option. So the question is now, what do I say? Well, when you're calling, you're saying, hi, my name is Ryan. I'm looking for the owner of 123 Main Street. Bit of a random question. Looking to buy a house in the area. Wonder if you have any interest in selling. Now, I will tell you, most of the time, people are going to say no. Not interested, not interested, not interested. Sometimes they'll be a little ornery. Sometimes they may swear at you. But if you keep this up long enough, you'll eventually find a deal. And that's what we're looking for, because good things will happen with time. So do you have any other properties you may want to sell, or do you know anyone else that wants to sell? Is a question I ask for anyone that says they are not interested. You never know who they may refer you to, or who they may know, or they may themselves have another property they are interested in selling. So number 5, we get to the appointment. This is the appointment. For those interested, you can gather more details on our motivated seller sheet. It's something that we give to all of our members. So you set a firm appointment. A pro tip, you want to identify that you're actually an investor, and you may get more listings with an agent, although we will save you agent fees. So this is my conversation is, hey, you got to realize we're investors. We can't pay top dollar on it, but you won't have to pay the agent fees. You won't have to pay some of those costs. And I can get you a good deal and a very fair offer. That's the concept. Because if somebody is planning on you paying retail for the property, you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time. But if somebody is planning on taking a little less because they realize they don't have agent fees and commissions, also if they realize the house is in need of work and they can't sell it on the open market, that's going to be the type of person that understands that, recognizes that, and wants to move forward even with that in mind. Okay, comparable value research. I use Investor's Edge for that. I bring that to the meeting. I determine the max allowable offer. I build a relationship. I negotiate with them. I get them to sign a contract, and I take pictures of the property so that I can remember the property, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, the fact of the matter is not everyone is going to sell. Not every person's house you go to is going to sell. But if you do it right, about 1 in 4 is actually going to sell. They're going to say, yes, let's move ahead and make this sale happen. Number 6, cash buyers list. So now you got to say, hey, who in those zip codes is actually paying cash for properties? With this list, you can then go after them. You can skip trace the cash buyers. You can call them and say, I have a deal like the one you bought down the area. Send them the details of the deal, get offers from those cash buyers, negotiate with those, and then we move into step 7, which is the actual closing. If it's an assignment, they send you the money, you sign over the contract, and they move forward. So for example, if you had a property for $100,000, they were gonna pay $110,000, they can send you a check for $10,000, or I should say a wire transfer. They take over your position on the contract for the $100,000, and they go ahead and close on the transaction. Some states, you may need to do a full closing. You may have to get title and do a full closing rather than do an assignment. It's going to depend on your state and some of your state laws there. Now with the closing, you can do a double close or simultaneous close. Again, this is going to be state driven. You send it to a title company or a closing attorney, and that's who I talk to about how can I do these wholesale transactions. Talk to your title company, talk to a closing attorney. Set closing time when it's actually going to happen. So let's do a quick review of the 7 steps of the wholesale process. Number 1 is create a blueprint. Number 2 is get software. Number 3 is drive. Number 4 is to make phone calls. Number 5 is go to the appointment. Number 6 is get your cash buyers list. And number 7 is close on the deal. These are the 7 steps of the wholesaling process.